This summer, I turned 13. I'm finally a teenager. My parents wanted to make it memorable for my twin sister and I. Knowing our love for water and adventure, they enrolled us in Scuba Schools International to get our scuba diving license. I was so excited. I was eager to put on the 60-pound scuba gear and just jump into the deep waters of Morrison's Quarry. "Easy there, my little shark," is what I heard from my dad. "You will have 10 days of home study, a weekend of coaching with your instructor, followed by a test, before you can even think of diving." Wait, what? Why? I thought. At that moment, I didn't think of all the dangers of scuba diving. I just wanted the thrill of diving. Nope. I didn't think that a bad regulator can result in drowning, or that a rapid ascent to the surface of the water can make my lungs swell and pop like a balloon, or that oxygen toxicity can happen below 135 feet, causing seizures. Now, I know what most of the adults are thinking right now. Typical teenage behavior. Risk taker, thrill seeker, lack of good judgment, right? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Ashbury TEDx community for inviting me to speak on the rebellious teen. Is it impulsive behavior, or is there a neuroscientific explanation? As a teenager, I feel I am entering uncharted waters. There are just so many unknowns that I have to sail through before adulthood. In this talk, I want to share what I've learned about the neuroscience of the teenage brain, share the links from these findings to our behavior, and share some tips I found useful for teenagers and adults on how to navigate through these unstable waters. Teenagers are constantly going under the stereotype of being impulsive, irrational, and moody. Adults throughout history have been complaining about the behaviors of young people. This dates back to the days of ancient Greek philosophers. Socrates, a very well-known ancient Greek philosopher, said, "Children are tyrants. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize over their teachers." Geez, I never thought I would be considered a tyrant for crossing my legs. Even 400 years ago, in Shakespeare's times, he spoke about typical teens and their behaviors. And I quote, "I would there were no age between 10 and 3 and 20, or that youth would sleep out the rest, in the between, but wronging the ancientry, stealing, fighting." Basically, what Shakespeare was trying to say is that teens should go into a hibernation period from age 10 and wake up when they turn 23. We are apparently no use to society between this period, as all we do, according to Shakespeare, is harass our elders, steal, and fight. Thankfully, we live in the 21st century and rely more on science than sonnets and soliloquies to explain why things are the way they are. Don't get me wrong, I actually happen to love Shakespeare. But OMG, Mr. Shakespeare, for real? Teenagers are basically useless from age 10 to 23? Come on. Lucky for us, scientists wanted to study our mysterious brains. With the help of advanced neuroimaging tools, they've been able to look deep into the teenage brain and see what is really going on. So, it's time to find out. Are these just misconceptions? Or do these observations have a biological explanation? To start off, the brain is the most complex organ in the body. Did you know that the human brain can actually generate about 23 watts of power? That's literally enough to power a light bulb. But here's the catch. The human brain isn't fully formed until the age of 25. Research has found that adult and teen brains work very differently. Adults think with the prefrontal cortex. Think of the prefrontal cortex as the CEO of your brain. This is the part involved in planning, strategizing, and responding to situations with good judgment and awareness of long-term consequences. This is why my dad was able to think of all the risks of scuba diving on my behalf. Teens, however, process information with the amygdala, which is part of the brain's limbic system. This is the emotional part of the brain, which controls fear, aggression, and excitement. While the frontal cortex is still under development, the teenage brain relies heavily on the amygdala. This explains why I was so consumed with the thrill of scuba diving and less concerned with the risks. Many published studies prove that teenage actions are guided much more by the emotional and reactive amygdala and less by the thoughtful frontal cortex. Studies have also shown that drug and alcohol use can delay these significant changes in the teenage brain. So, to all teenagers listening tonight, stay out of drugs and alcohol. It's not good for the development of your frontal cortex, and it's simply not good for your development, period. All that being said, this does not mean that teenagers do not know the difference between right and wrong, and that we should not be held accountable for our actions. It's just important for adults to understand the uncontrollable changes that we are going through. The Stanford Children's Hospital suggests that the following small actions can have a huge impact on teenagers. I actually found these tips to be very helpful, and I shared them with my parents. Discussing the consequences of our actions can help us link impulsive thinking with facts, reminding us that we're resilient and competent. Because we're often so focused in the moment, we have trouble seeing that we can play a part in changing bad situations. Become familiar with things that are important to us. I'm still trying to get my parents to understand the rules of Magic the Gathering, the card game, but it's hopeless. Thanks for trying, Mom and Dad. I appreciate it. Ask teens if they want you to respond when they come to you with problems, or do they just want you to listen? Hopefully, I've been able to convince you that the differences with the teenage behavior have a biological explanation. The teenage brain is actually wired very differently than the adult brain. At the end, I listened to my dad and was very prepared for the 60-foot dive underwater after completing all the pre-dive preparation. And I passed. I wanted to thank my parents, coaches, and teachers for their patience with me as my brain navigates these uncharted waters from teenager to adulthood. Thank you.